You guys, this is too much fun.
This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm Patrick Gulo.
I'm Nate Blyton.
I'm Sam Merciers.
And I'm David McDonald. And do you see how we didn't mess that up at all?
Awesome.
We didn't mess it up at all.
We got it in one take, as far as anyone knows.
That's right.
Everyone listening should know that deciding the order when we introduce the show is pretty serious business.
The most contentious
There's
issue of the day.
business.
It's definitely the longest part of our pre-show kind of process.
Our process, it's like to get into character.
Yeah.
I actually haven't eaten in 3 days, and I spent the last 3 weeks in Italy learning how to make shoes to get into this role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. You really
So-
Daniel Day-Lewis that.
Right. That's what I was going for. I'm glad you appreciate the effort that I put in. So we don't have a guest this week, which is why we're goofing off so much at the beginning of the show. But we do have a lot of really interesting stories. I think we should start with the most recent of the most recent news, which just in the last couple of days, as we are recording this on Sunday, Sunday the 9th, is it? Just yesterday it was announced that the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and their musicians have reached an agreement. They have a 4-year deal. It will include pay increases of 6% over the course of the 4-year deal. They're going to start with a number of 77 musicians, which is a decrease from their current level, but they will be getting more back at several points throughout the contract. So they'll be getting back. Both sides claimed to get a lot out of the federal mediation process that they entered. And we'll see if 4 years is enough. 4-year deal is pretty good, right? Better than the 2-year deal that they had before.
Yeah, well, they in 2012 they took it says 14 to 15% reduction in pay. I don't know why they don't know the number. In 2012, that was the conclusion of the previous lockout. So they're going to get some of that back, but they're also going to have to pay more individually for their insurance. So they're getting some of their money back, but they're also going to have to pay more for their insurance. And like you said, they have 77 musicians for the first year of this 4-year deal, and you got to realize that they're used to historically having 95 full-time. So that's more than a little bit of a reduction.
Right. And that means some people are going to have to be let go at the start of this deal.
Yeah.
They're back to playing this week. They are playing Beethoven and Mozart this week, Beethoven 9 and Mozart Violin Concerto. So congratulations to the Atlanta Symphony.
I wonder if that reduction is going to cause any changes in the direction of programming concerning, what works might be feasible for them at certain times, if they're willing to contract out for, the larger instrumentations.
Gigantic, romantic period pieces that, need a 140-person orchestra, maybe not.
Well, or contemporary pieces that require 17 percussionists.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not like they were carrying 17 percussionists anyway, so.
Right. You mentioned that people will have to be let go. Actually, that's true, but with retirements and just departures where people are departing because they're tired of the drama, they're already down to 80 as we speak. So that's only 3 that have to be liquidated.
Right. And I can't imagine that anybody that was successful enough to catch on at the Atlanta Symphony is going to have too tough a time finding a new gig somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll have to see how it turns out. But it seems like things are in good shape. And what's surprising about this one in particular, compared to the Minnesota Orchestra and the Detroit Symphony lockouts that we have discussed before, is that with a few notable exceptions, we didn't actually hear much about the negotiations as they were going on. Right? There was a lot of back and forth in the press with Detroit and especially with Minnesota, and especially as the kind of listener lobby groups organized themselves in Minnesota and Detroit, there was a lot of very vocal players, not both people directly involved with the negotiations and people commenting from outside, and we didn't see as much of that from Atlanta.
No, we didn't, but we did see Robert Spano come out in favor of the musicians.
That's true.
Yeah,
which is kind of unheard of.
To me, it was also interesting that it's sort of like the section of the public that gives a damn about labor disputes in orchestras have been trained now. This is what happens when this happens to an orchestra. We coalesce support around the musicians, and it's almost like the public is getting better at doing that. And, well, the organizations are getting better at knowing how to make it happen, too.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we're kind of, I mean, most people, they kind of, the public in general, I guess, sort of rallies with the musicians. I don't know if it's appropriate to say that. If that's
the default position.
True.
I don't know if that's true. I think in some places. Go ahead.
My only thing is, I wonder if, like, should we think more about, or is there something that we miss from the administration side that is kind of lost in the conversation ever?
I could be. To me, it seems like we sort of the default position is granting the moral high ground to the musicians. And while we want to support the musicians, I wouldn't necessarily say that they always earn that position, even though they sort of de facto get it.
Right. Yeah, it's something to think about, certainly.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Dave?
Well, I was just going to say that I think while we feel some kind of kinship with the musicians as people who trained with and as musicians ourselves, I don't know if everybody feels that they have a personal relationship with people that wear tuxedos to work.
Yeah.
And they have conservatory backgrounds. I think a lot of people almost see these kinds of labor issues in similar terms to the way they see professional athletes when they go on strike. Like, those people are doing fine. Like, it makes sense when steelworkers go on strike, but when people who are very well compensated and very highly and specially trained go on strike or get locked out, I think it's a little bit harder for some people to feel sympathy or empathy for them.
Kind of like what we just said a couple minutes ago, saying that, like, well, they're all highly trained. I'm sure they'll get another job if they need to.
Yeah. So,
Well, congratulations.
It does suck, but that things are going that direction. But congratulations to the guys, as Sam was saying. What were you going to say, Sam?
Even bigger congratulations to the SoundNotion panel, because we don't have to talk about the Atlanta Symphony, at least for a while, unless they maybe do something cool like premiere a new piece.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll have an even better reason to talk about them soon.
Yes.
Exactly.
Speaking of, but here's some good news about orchestras.
Oh, do tell.
Bard College and the New York Phil both have new educational initiatives, or at least not new in one case, but sort of like a recommitment and amped up effort for educational things with the New York Philharmonic. Bard College, the Longy School of Music of Bard College is launching what the president describes as something that's the equivalent of a medical residency for postgraduate musicians, which I think is a fantastic idea. It's an orchestra that people can come and play in while they're working on a 3-year master's degree, and the orchestra will do they're going to get paid. So that's sort of like, I guess, the way their scholarship, air quotes, is going to work. They're basically going to be paid to play in this orchestra, which is going to tour, and did they say do recordings as well? But I know they're going to tour.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's very similar to the New World Symphony model here in Miami, where these are all students, right? They are all playing in an orchestra as kind of this postgraduate thing to develop experience with orchestral repertoire and life as an orchestral musician, and they get master classes from orchestral musicians and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's very cool. And New World Symphony does great stuff. I would love to see more things like it around the country.
Well, Leon Botstein, the president of Bard, explicitly says in this piece that it's modeled after the New World Symphony. So
Right.
it's no accident.
Right.
So that's really cool, and can't wait to see what comes of that. The
And, I've heard the New World Symphony play a few times since I lived down here. They're really good.
yeah.
Like, I know they're all students, but they are really good.
Yeah. And so on the flip side, well, that's an educational institution instituting an orchestra training program, and on the flip side, there is an orchestra instituting, or at least recommitting itself to, an educational program. They have, it's called the New York Philharmonic Global Academy, is an umbrella group that's going to be involved in this, but it's an extension of a program they've been doing with sister orchestras in Santa Barbara and Shanghai, where musicians from the Phil go there and give master classes, and they're going to extend that for, what was it, for another, they're going to extend that for at least another 4 years. And interestingly, the Phil has said that one of the benefits of doing this program, and it makes perfect sense to me, is it's a way to try and get donors who have some money to give, who are not, your standard donors, basically New York-based donors for Lincoln Center. So that's it's a good educational thing, but hopefully it'll be a good fiduciary thing for the Met.
For the Met?
I mean, for the Phil, excuse me. Met,
right.
Phil, those guys. Either one of those guys.
Those one-syllable rock stars in New York, right?
That's right.
Right. So we covered the Met and the Phil there. The one thing we missed was Carnegie Hall, who is doing a really cool experiment. They just started this last week, actually, as we're recording this on Tuesday. They live streamed a concert by Joyce DiDonato. You probably saw her sing at World Series Star Spangled Banner, right? And
she played it safe.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I don't know what that means.
Say that.
What did you say, Sam?
I said she played it safe.
I don't get it.
Her Star Spangled Banner was good, but she played it very safe.
Oh, I thought you were joking. I thought you were making a pun on a baseball pun.
No, actually, I mean, yes, I was.
No, she sang very, very well, and but anyway, so they are kind of jumping onto this bandwagon of major concert organizations, concert presenting organizations, streaming their stuff to the web. We've talked a lot about the live in HD from the Metropolitan Opera. The Berlin Philharmonic does a lot of live streams, and they are doing this through a partnership with Medici TV, which does a lot of live streaming stuff around the world. If you ever want to see what's going on at a cool music festival somewhere in Europe, a lot of times you can hear it on Medici TV.
You can hear it and watch it, and I got to tell you, the production quality of those are incredible.
They're great.
Yes.
They're great. They have figured out the web streaming technology stuff in a way that not a lot of companies have.
Yeah.
And and not just like the technical aspects of it, the production, not value, the production style of how they show the thing is appealing. It doesn't have like, oh look, there's another cut shot of the bassoon player. That's only the 48th time I've seen that shot. Like it's interesting enough to have on the screen without just like you see a lot of these televised orchestra concerts from the 80s as an example. And it's just the same cut shot over and over and over and over and over again. And these are, it's a quality outfit doing it, I guess. Is
what I think is cool about Carnegie doing it as opposed to Met or Berlin Philharmonic, or we've even talked about the Royal Opera doing it, is that they are doing it with smaller events, smaller like recitals, chamber recitals and things. So this was a vocal recital that was streamed on Tuesday, and then this week we've got a violin recital on Sophie Mutter. on November 18th, Leonidas Kavakos on November 22nd, and Daniil Trifonov on December 9th. I've not heard Trifonov before, but I have read amazing things about his piano playing, and so I am super excited to stream that. That's going on my calendar for December 9th. So,
have you read other things about people's piano playing?
Speaking of things one might read about piano playing.
I was getting there, and you guys just shined a bright spot. I was like, I was the guy in the cartoon sneaking out of jail, and then you guys just swung the searchlight on the side of the building. But it's tough to read about some of these guys when they get only mildly glowing reviews. And you wonder how that's going to affect their career in the long term, don't you? Don't you worry about guys like that, Sam?
Oh, yeah.
Man, I wish there was somewhere I could read about a story like that or something.
I know. So what we're joking about is this really interesting and kind of crazy story that has come up in the last couple of weeks on the internet. So if you're not familiar, this spring, the European Union passed this crazy bananas law that has been described as the right to be forgotten. And what it is it allows people who feel that they have things that show up in Google search engine histories, in Google searches, I should say, to request from Google that they be taken down because they are no longer relevant. So this started out by a guy who was having trouble buying a house because he had some credit problem that caused him to be written about in the newspaper, like he'd gone bankrupt and for whatever reason that had been in the newspaper or something. And it had been long enough ago that it shouldn't have counted against his credit, but it was still showing up in Google searches for the guy's name. And so the problem was that he was having difficulty getting a loan or getting a home or something like that. And so now, in Europe only, people can request that Google delist certain pages from their search results, and you fill out a form, and they have to have a real person take a look at it. It's a huge, crazy, unscalable mess for Google to deal with. It doesn't, we should point out, get rid of the actual source material. It just delists it from Google. And so, along these lines, pianist Dejan Lazic has. Did I get it right? Did I get it not even close? Dejan?
I think it's Dejan Lazic.
Okay, Dejan Lazic. I'll go with Patrick on this one. He seems to know.
Mm-hmm.
Dejan Lazic has requested that the Washington Post take down a review of his recital,
citing the right to be forgotten law.
Yes.
So I don't think they actually cited the right to be forgotten law. I think that is something that has come up in the reporting of this that is not true.
Oh.
I think the letter mentioned the right to be forgotten, but it did not say you must, under the right to be forgotten, remove this review. Mm-hmm. Because the right to be forgotten only deals with search engines.
Uh-huh. Okay, so it wasn't
with publishers.
So it was not part of the original letter that he sent to the Washington Post.
So he mentions the right to be forgotten, but he does not say that due to the right to be forgotten, you must remove this review.
Well, let's point out this is by the review is by Anne Majette, and the headline is "Sparks but no flame."
There's actually a lot of good stuff in her review. Like it's not.
Yeah, it's not as just a slam.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not just a mindless slam at all. But it's so fun. And this, to me, speaks about the egos of, what Anne refers to as grandiloquence, which I had to look up to make sure I knew what it meant.
That's a good word.
Yeah, so in the letter that he wrote, it says, I so often listen to a concert and then the next day read about it in the newspapers, read something that is simply too far from the truth. So he's placing himself in a position as arbiter of the truth, which I think is funny.
For a completely subjective thing.
Yeah, this is something I, as an artist, am seeking and looking for my whole life, the truth, which A, doesn't mean anything, and B, it puts an awful lot of credence in his own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Anne Majette gets paid to do this, and she's one of the few around that I think still does a really good job of it too.
Well, and I think it also is a problem with the way people think about like the responsibility of Google and the responsibility of publishers as opposed to the responsibility of themselves to just like live with people not liking what you do.
Yeah, and let's point out that this giving him issues as far as like search results is because Anne Majette wrote it, and she's respected in the field, and he doesn't like it because of that. But he would be getting an equal and opposite good reaction if it was a really, really good review, and it would get a lot of network penetration because it's Anne Majette. So you have to take the good with the bad if you don't want this to happen.
Well, he said
again.
that he doesn't. He said that he's not sure if it's like damaging to his career. He did go on WQXR in actually a conversation with Anne Majette and Naomi Lewin to talk about this very subject.
Mm-hmm.
You can listen on WQXR, but he said basically he's not sure if it has been detrimental to his career or not. He just doesn't like that it is the second result in a Google search for him.
Well, you know what? Now I bet it's the first.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's see. Let's do this in real time.
Everybody.
He's getting a crazy Streisand effect here.
Yeah.
It is definitely
not familiar with the Streisand effect. This happened when Barbra Streisand complained that there was a site on the internet that had an aerial photograph of a home of hers on it. Now, there's not like it was from a freaking helicopter, right? If you're in a helicopter, you can take pictures from the helicopter. That's not against the law. And so there was this picture, and before she started complaining about it, 6 people had seen it. As soon as she started complaining about it, millions of people saw it.
Yeah.
And if she had just shut up and let it slide, maybe 12 people would have seen it ever, and now 12 million people have seen it, right? So this guy is just shining a bright spotlight on this review and getting more people to link to it. Every story that I have read about this thing has had a link to Anne Majette's original review. Well, if you know anything about how Google works, that is going to increase the search result rank for whatever that page is with all those incoming links. Many from respectable journalists. Respectable journalists.
It looks like it is number 4 now on a Google search, not 2.
Right?
But
are the three things above it people talking about it though?
No, it's home, biography, and his Wikipedia entry.
Okay.
I opened it in an incognito page just to be sure. So.
Of course, all the if you go to news, then that's a different story.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if you go to the Washington Post, Anne Majette has gone back and forth with this guy and has written kind of a follow-up on it and even published his entire letter requesting the takedown, which is kind of crazy.
But I've got the answer for him. Next time, play a recital.
That was awfully snotty.
He's being awfully snotty. She was mean to me. That's what this is like to me. She was mean. She needs to take that down.
Take that back. Yeah.
I just think it's ridiculous to whine about something that a reviewer said about you like this.
And like we've pointed out, is not a particularly negative review. Anne is a little snotty in the end of her rebuttal here. She writes, I guess, thanks to my review, he'll have to put up with being known as, quote, a pianist of prodigious gifts, unquote, forever. Like, you could complain, or you could take a pianist of prodigious gifts and put it as a pull quote on your webpage, right?
No kidding.
Right.
Anne Majette says,
if somebody said that to me, and then the next sentence said, but he's a total piece of crap when it comes to writing music, I would take a composer of prodigious gifts and plaster it all over everything that I sent to anybody.
That's right.
Well, that's an interesting situation, especially for a publicist, because you have to kind of like, even if there's something great that's said in an article, you kind of have to like see, is the article, should you be pulling quotes from that article in that there is maybe one nice thing said and everything else is bad? I would not
pull quotes, but you don't link to it.
I still wouldn't put that on a sheet or something.
You know,
It's dangerous. It's very dangerous.
I think it's mortifying, should be mortifying to the panel this morning that this is ultimately the most inconsequential story we've got, but it's the one that we're giggling and talking about the most.
It's kind of crazy.
Right.
Yes.
So
On to something actually important.
Oh?
Any chance we have on this show to talk about Taylor Swift, you know I'm going to take it, right?
Mhm.
I actually didn't know that about you, but I'm learning. Even after all these years, I still learn things about Sam.
Yeah. So,
In a for Spotify, what has to be a really big deal, Taylor Swift removed all of her music from Spotify. Was it last week? Or,
Yeah, it was around the time the album was released.
very recently.
Is it just her, or is it all of her label, Big Machine?
I don't know. It says
And I don't think actually they removed any of it. I think it was not there to begin with.
No, I think it was.
But-
I think it was on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
Tom York did this too. Not for
Well,
Radiohead.
Tom York and Adam Surtees did it, yes.
yes.
But there are several big-time musicians that have done that. That strikes me as kind of petty.
Well, it's just the only reason why it's a big deal is that you don't get more like super hype pop star in the midst of her glam and fame than Taylor Swift is right now.
right.
Right. She sold something like by now around probably 1.5 million copies of her new album, 1989.
It's one of the it's in a small group of albums that have sold, what is it, 1 million in a week or something like that.
I mean, right.
Yeah.
He's one of maybe one of the only artists actually going platinum these days, and
Or was that Nate get a little closer?
yeah, she's one of the only artists actually going platinum these days. So this is like,
Well, as we were discussing before the show, she's the first solo artist this year to go platinum. This is the second platinum selling album of the year. The first was the Frozen soundtrack,
right.
and so this is the first like actual single artist album to go platinum. So she's the first and probably maybe the last platinum album this year. We'll see. But
Yeah.
it was looking like we might have the first year with no platinum artist, which would be kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a number of reasons for that. One of them is streaming, right? Because the platinum selling thing is counting sales,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty hard for artists to make up the sales from streams because you have to get a song streamed like 1,500 times to count as a sale in 2014. So it's going much more slowly. And we've also seen that many more people are streaming instead of buying albums, even buying downloads, right? We've seen from the beginning of this year something like a 14% decrease in digital download track sales on a 40% increase in streaming, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So people are just not going to go as platinum anymore. And I think another part of it has to do with people. We're seeing less and less hegemonic culture of these big, crazy superstars, right? We're seeing only a small handful of Taylor Swift's and Marvel's Avengers movies, and many more people finding their kind of middle ground stars in their little genres, right? Like, I talk to music business students all the time, and they've like, there are some people that come in to my classes and are just obsessed with Pitbull. I do not understand Pitbull. Can someone please explain to me what anybody sees in the music or person of Pitbull? I think he's a total clown. But to these people, he is like the biggest thing in their world. And then to another group of people, Wiz Khalifa is the biggest thing in their world.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I can kind of see Wiz Khalifa. Pitbull I don't get, though.
I think things that work towards making it harder for people to, like you said, have that kind of hegemony over culture is a good thing.
Well, and Spotify does that, right? Because it costs just as much, and there's no penalty for trying something new on Spotify the way there is on iTunes, right? The penalty for trying a new track on iTunes is 99 cents.
Right.
The penalty for trying something new on Spotify is It's already included in either your free membership or your paid membership.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I do want to say.
Okay, so
big
but to the issue at
giants.
hand,
ahead,
is streaming good for musicians?
You guys need to dance.
One person at a time. All right, kids. Nate, you have the talking stick.
Go.
I just want to mention that speaking of the hegemonic icons, I am really glad, and I just wanted to mention this, that last weekend Prince wowed the world with his Saturday Night Live performance. Check that out as well.
Yeah.
That things like that are still happening.
Prince is a weird dude.
Right.
He's a weird dude. Talented dude.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He released 2 full-length and completely different albums at the same time, and it's notable. It was a very notable SNL performance because instead of doing 2 3.5 to 4 minute sessions, he did one massive 8-minute thing, where he started off with one song that was from one album and then transitioned to the other album, and then the back half of his performance, the first song was like, roughly half of his allotted time, and then the rest of it was like 45 to 60 second spins through a number of the songs from one of his albums. So he did like a medley of 6 of his own songs in the back half of the concert with lots of virtuosic guitar flair and all this kind of stuff.
But he was quite clearly actually playing himself as he
yeah.
didn't plug in his guitar at first, and there was no guitar, and so he plugged in and then played guitar, and it was great.
Mm-hmm. Really great performance.
So, yeah.
What were you going to ask about, Patrick?
Oh, I just was opening it up to the issue at hand, and that is streaming good for musicians?
In what way?
Is the current streaming model good for musicians, I should say? Not the technology, but the business model.
I mean, I honestly don't know yet. I don't know if we've figured that out yet. It is good for... It seems to be okay for record labels at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be not good for musicians, and it interestingly also seems to be not good for the streaming services themselves, because so far none of them has turned a profit.
Yeah, but
So
they keep doing this while not turning a profit, but they've got the at least American public is hooked. I don't think that a lot of people
they
talk
don't
about
have the American public totally hooked. They're growing fast, but there are still a lot of people buying records. They are much bigger in other parts of the world. They're bigger in Europe, and they've just been around longer in Europe, at least Spotify. Now, we've had Rhapsody for a long time, and in fact, this is an interesting thing about the Taylor Swift thing. Taylor Swift only pulled her stuff from Spotify. You can still listen to Taylor Swift on Rhapsody, and Rhapsody made a big deal about that this week. It was like they made a big deal saying, "Hey, we still have Taylor Swift." And everybody said, nobody cares because nobody listens on Rhapsody, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunate, but true. And Ardeo, I think, actually still has Taylor Swift as well. I'm pretty sure she's on Pandora as well.
I wonder if Taylor Swift's MySpace music page is up and running still.
Ah.
So here's the I think personally, I think it's crazy that there is a free Spotify version that is just ad supported, and the ads don't even come up all that much. The fact that I can listen to anything on Spotify for free and have the whole catalog, I think that's pretty crazy.
But it's not free.
It's not free. Yeah, you're right. It's not free, but it's in effect, I have to deal with some stuff, but I'm not paying any money.
So just because it's free to you does not mean it's free. Spotify is still paying somebody every time somebody listens to their thing, regardless of how they're listening to it.
Yes, but there's a revenue stream that's not coming in, and that's from the listener. I think Spotify's service for everyone should be a paying service.
Okay,
Well,
so
they-
whoa. Whether somebody is a paying member or not,
Let the professor speak.
Whether you're paying for it or not paying for it, Spotify pays the same amount to the same people because they are performing the same thing. They are performing the work and performing the recording in exactly the same way, using exactly the same technology to the same person, whether you are logged in as a $10 a month subscriber, as a family plan subscriber, or as a free account. It doesn't matter. The only thing that affects is Spotify's bottom line. It has no effect on whether Spotify is paying Taylor Swift or not.
It may.
Okay, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I just wanted to say maybe it's not out of the realm of possibility that having everyone who is using the quote unquote free service, and that money coming into the service might go back to the musicians.
So you're
that
saying
would allow them to offer more money per stream.
Yeah, he's saying not get rid of the free version and use that money to pay the musicians more. But I don't know that would work. And you got to realize that Spotify uses the free version, which has some frustrating limitations on mobile, which I think is the most important platform that it exists on. You can't select individual tracks on mobile, so it gets people into it in a way that makes them want to pay for a subscription. And I think it works. I mean, I've come very close to if I streamed more on my phone, I probably would pay for a subscription by now.
Mm-hmm.
Spotify is not going to pay any more than they are required to pay just out of the goodness of their hearts to support musicians. What they are going to pay is the lowest that they can get the record labels to agree to. The problem is how much the record labels are paying musicians. And that is a story that nobody is talking about in this, because that is a thing that happens on a one-off basis for each artist that a record label signs, and then the record label decides how much of the money they're getting from Spotify to turn around and give to the artist. They don't pay the artist directly, they pay the record label, and the record label decides how much of that money to pay the artist. And if the record label cared enough to get more money out of Spotify, that would change things. Or if the record label cared
if they knew there was more money coming in.
Say what?
That would be part of the conversation. Oh, Spotify, you have this whole new stream of money coming in. That can be a part of our negotiation. Like if that was known to the record labels.
That's not how it works, though. It would be that the record label would say you have to have this new stream of revenue, or you have to pay us this much, and if that means you have to get revenue from someplace else, then so be it. But I think part of what has made Spotify so important is that there is a free service, and we just saw Rdio last month drop their. And for a long time, Rdio did not have a free service, and now they do, because they were getting killed by Spotify that does have a free service. And the free service is a really important part of what makes Spotify special, because you can share a link to a track with somebody that does not use Spotify. And
that's really great for Spotify.
Say what?
I said that's really great for Spotify.
I'm saying that if it were not for that, then streaming wouldn't be big, and everything would collapse again.
I don't know. I mean, I think we don't know. It's too soon to tell something like that. I mean, like
sure it does. You only need to look at how crappy Rhapsody was for so long.
Well, I mean, there could be other factors that go into that. I mean, I don't know of Rhapsody's marketing plan or something, or how they were getting themselves out there. Somehow, Spotify made the deals and convinced everyone to get on board, and that's why Spotify has been so popular. It's because of the catalog.
I think they're mutually informing. Spotify got the major labels, and then they got big, and then because they had the major labels, more independents wanted to get on, and then they grew that way. They grew through both of those things in combination. You have to have both of them, and Rhapsody didn't have both of them because they only had paid subscriptions. Rhapsody's been around for 15 years at least, and like Rhapsody was around when we were in college. Mm-hmm. And nobody used them because they were a paid service and they only had a handful of recordings. People use Spotify because they have a free service and they have everything.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though is that people have now that Spotify came into the game and it's part of this listening experience. Then if you were to take away that streaming, people would be like, oh my God, what's going on? We need to get that back, and we need to do whatever it takes to get that back. Like that, it's so ubiquitous amongst music listeners today in a way that Rhapsody never was.
And I think that it would lose that ubiquity within a year if they got rid of the free service.
So you don't think there'd be something like there would be a better deal for musicians or for the labels made?
No.
With that.
No. Because there would always be another free service. We've already gotten the free service. There's no going back.
Mm-hmm.
What if tomorrow somebody asked you to start paying $10 a month to watch YouTube videos? Would you keep watching YouTube videos? Hell no. You'd start watching Vimeo or Dailymotion or something
You know,
else.
you do have a point with that, because even if all the labels like got together and decided they weren't going to give their business to any service that offered a free service, that would immediately be considered collusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, like I don't, I don't have all the numbers and facts about this, but I mean, I do,
Well, that's one of the
all
frustrating
about
things
those.
is nobody does because all these deals are secret.
Mhm.
We do know though that BMI and ASCAP and any PRO has been really vocal about supporting the musicians for the streaming services, especially with ASCAP. It had a campaign to kind of try to get Pandora to pay more per stream. I think it was a few months ago. I don't know if you guys ever heard about that.
They've done things like that before. There was the lawsuit with the was it the Turtles guys suing XM Radio, and now they're suing Pandora.
Oh yeah.
Pre-1972 performances. I mean, that's another thing for another podcast that we don't do on this network. But there's a lot of things that we're still figuring out when it comes to streaming and who gets paid for those things.
Well, if you're interested in seeing some live music instead of streaming music, you know what I would suggest?
What's that, Sam?
Going to see friend of the show, Jennifer Higdon's Cold Mountain, has tickets on sale. We had her on the show I guess over a year ago by now, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, so we talked about her working on Cold Mountain, an opera version of Cold Mountain then, and it is done.
And when I remember we talked about it, it felt like it was like so forever in the future, like it was gonna happen in 2016 or something, or like we'd all take our flying cars to the premiere of this opera. Nope.
And
It's happening now.
certainly, and we kind of joked about like whether or not we would still be doing SoundNotion when it happened. Well, here we are, still obsessive compulsive plugging along with our SoundNotion show. So August, there's shows spread out over August. August 1st, 5th, 14th, 17th, and 22nd. So if you're in the Southeast anywhere and you're an opera lover, I would suggest. I mean, I would really, really love to go and see this opera.
Them at the Southwest.
Yeah. What did I say?
To the Southeast.
Yeah. Or the Southeast. I mean, come on. What are you? Like, it's only like a 23-hour drive.
Right.
Maybe there's a free streaming option.
Yeah. Is there a free streaming option for Cold Mountain?
I would even pay.
Anyway, being done by the Santa Fe Opera, and I'll have links in the show notes if anybody is in the area and wants to go and see that show. I would suggest it.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
And lastly today, this won't mean a lot to a lot of people, but because I'm a Clara nerd and I'm married to a Clara nerd, and this person is sort of a fixture in that world, British jazz clarinetist. They say jazz clarinetist, but that's not really an accurate thing. Acker Bilk. If you know who Acker Bilk is, then well, you know who Acker Bilk is. He has a very distinctive sound and actually got onto the pop charts, reached the top of the pop charts in Britain with his version of Stranger on the Shore, and that was kind of like what he was known for, and he would have to thereafter always close shows with it. Not a jazz clarinetist, more like the Kenny G of clarinet, sort of. He plays pop songs like The Rose. You know, he was really well known for doing The Rose and Stranger on the Shore and Beatles tunes. Just whatever was popular, that's what he would play. And with vibrato that oscillates up and down like a perfect fifth at a very high rate of speed. So for anyone out there who knows who I'm talking about, he will be missed. He was certainly a unique voice in the clarinet world. I'll have a link to Stranger on the Shore, so anybody who wants to experience that kind of vibrato.
You know, speaking of deaths and anniversaries, you guys know whose anniversary it was this past week?
Oh yeah,
The 200
bicentennial, big one.
200th birthday of Adolphe Sax.
Yeah.
I played a little sax in class in
Did you
honor.
play Happy Birthday on the sax in
You know,
class?
I didn't. I should have. I was
Well,
actually.
you shouldn't have, because then you'd had to pay Warner Chappell for the privilege of doing so.
That's it.
Is that
I
still
was.
a thing?
I used it as a talking point to talk about how technology affects new music and how new music ideas about form are affected by technology. I used the saxophone as a launch point for music technology.
I don't think this is a real class. I think you just come in and tell us about these wild Sam things that you said, and then you say, I talked about this in class this week. Like, none of these things could go together into any reasonable class.
For the class that he does at home for his cats, right?
Right.
No,
It's
it's
just learning
because,
so much about form, guys.
no, it's because I always give like a pre-concert lecture. Basically, I start playing a YouTube video or something before class starts, and I always talk about something in like the first 10 minutes because people always show up and just sit there, you know.
Nice.
So that's my pre-concert talk was about music technology and modern music and that kind of stuff.
Sounds like a good class to me.
It is a good class.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's SoundNotion. You should take Sam's class if you ever happen to find yourself an undergraduate student at the University of North Alabama. Right?
That's exactly right.
Go Lions.
As a matter of fact, you would have to. You would actually have no choice if you're a music major. So
That's good.
Well, so you have a captive audience. That's always a good start. But if you would like to check out any of the stories that Sam has talked about in his class this week, or any of the other stories that we've discussed on the show this week, you can do that by going to our site, soundnotion.tv/SN, and looking up Sam's lovingly crafted show notes. Thank you, Sam, for doing that. Sam puts a lot of effort and research into those. Somehow I got a Q in the word YouTube here in my notes. I don't know how that happened, but you can also connect with us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter.
YouTube.
And if you would like to find us on Twitter, we're at SoundNotion as a group. I'm at Dave McDowell, Sam is at Housegoy, Patrick is at Vox Shibuya, and Nate is at Nate And if you'd like to suggest a story or a topic for the show, you can tweet it at us with hashtag SNWeekly, and we always check that out as we're putting the show together. You should subscribe to this show in whatever podcast database that you like to use. The iTunes is a popular one. And leave us a review there. That helps people find us. So we really appreciate those who have done that. You can support this show by telling your friends about us, by using our Amazon affiliate search on our site, or by donating using the PayPal links. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gullo, and we will see you back next week.